It's great to see so many of you. In 2 weeks, we start the 2021 season, and I think we're all ready for some basketball. I am going to share my screen for the bulk of this presentation, so I'm going to start that now. I do want to caution you all that we have a chance to get our season in if we follow the procedures we have established for this season, and those that have been approved by the state health department. To be frank, what we are discussing today is what was approved by the CDPHE, and what was approved are the protocols we must follow to ensure we complete the season. I cannot stress this enough because any variance from these protocols could jeopardize our season. Schools may opt out of playing basketball if they choose, but we have a season and we have a way to get it done. We will have games canceled by COVID, and those games may not be able to be made up. Last fall, for example, for a period of 2 to 3 weeks, we had 30 to 40% of our scheduled football games impacted in some way by COVID. Most were able to be rescheduled because with only 1 game per week, they could make some adjustments. That's about 110 games a week scheduled. Right now, going into basketball, just so you are aware, at any time during any single week, we will have 200 to 300 basketball games scheduled. So rescheduling basketball may not be an option. But if we follow our protocols and we're careful, we can get this season completed. That puts a lot of responsibility on school administrators, coaches, athletic trainers, and players to adhere to those protocols. As a reminder, today's Zoom meeting is being recorded on the CHSAA YouTube channel, and you can pick it up there if you need it. I'm going to go through the email that I sent you on December 21 because I know that a number of you haven't had a chance to even review that at this particular point, and I'm going to expand on those topics as we go through. I'm also going to make an adjustment in the number of quarters a player is going to be allowed to play this season, giving your coaches broader discretion on players and allowing you to make the decisions on the number of levels you feel like you want to offer. So there will be some flexibility with quarters. I would ask that you place your questions in the chat or raise your hand, and either Ryan or I will recognize you and let me know if there is a question. So I do appreciate you doing it that way, if you would. Before we get started, the major goals when looking at how basketball was to be played this year included ensuring that we had a regular season, or as long a regular season as we could get under the 3 seasons still yet to be played. That was why we lobbied hard for additional games for all schools. We knew that maintaining the playoffs in their previous form would not pass inspection of the CDPHE due to the number of games and the size of the gatherings. We wanted to ensure that we could crown champions this year, something that we missed last year. So we limited the playoff numbers. That was a back and forth conversation, but we have been approved for what you will see today, and that is what we will play. For those classes that had districts, there will not be districts this year. But I will tell you that this is a 1 year off only for that. This is the basketball calendar. Start January 18th with our first practice, first competition, January 25th. End of the regular season, all classes, March 6th. There won't be any districts in any class. The state bracket will be released March 8th. State bracket dates, those are the days the games will be played, March 9th, 11th, 13th, and 16th. The state tournament will be March 19th through 20th. We hope that we get permission to play it all at one site. And we will have the state championship games there. Schedule on the 19th, which is Friday, would be the 2A boys and girls, 4A boys and girls, and 5A girls. On the 20th, which is Saturday, we would have 1A boys and girls, 3A boys and girls, and 5A boys. We will only do this if we are allowed to have fans in the stand. Otherwise, we will hold to the home sites at that point. Our game limits this year, 14 regular season varsity, 12 games sub-varsity. That's whatever level sub-varsity you have, you're limited to 12 games at that point. Players are limited to 76 total quarters in the season, and that does not count overtime or postseason games. You must play 7 games in your 14-game season to qualify for the playoffs. We will attempt to have a waiver process if we have to create some things. All the state games will be live streamed, and the reason we went with 12 sub-varsity contests was simply because we know there was going to be some levels, and we did want to keep we wanted to keep those other games for the varsity at this point and be able to cover as many games as we can with officials.
Hey Bert, there's a question in the chat on what's the rationale for 12 JV games instead of 14?
I just gave that one, Ryan. So playoff formats. It's 1 year only. It's this year only. These formats, well, we'll return to our normal formats next year after next year's season. Our seeding and selection index, the CHSAA seeding and selection index, will determine at-large qualifiers and seed the state basketball brackets in all 5 classifications. The 4 data points will be CHSAA RPI, CHSAA Coaches Poll, Max Preps rankings, and Packer rankings. These data points will be combined at the end of the season to create an overall ranking. To do this, data from each ranking will be added together and then divided by 4. I would like Ryan to step in here because he sent an email out this morning that's important for the coaches.
Yeah, we sent an email out this morning through Max Preps where coaches can sign up to vote in the coaches poll. We set a minimum of 4. They have to vote 4 times over the course of it's essentially 6 weeks in order to vote ahead of postseason. We do have an audit committee. We're going to be looking at votes just like we have with other sports. If we have questions, we always contact the coach directly, CC their athletic director so they know what's going on, stuff like that. So it's very we ensure the integrity of the coaches poll with that. But please ensure that your coach signs up if they'd like to vote. It's open to all coaches, and the more coaches we have voting, the better.
Thanks, Ryan. Just to answer a couple of the questions that have come up, that's 12 sub-varsity games per level. Okay, not just for all of sub-varsity, but per level. If 2 schools can get together and find a possible makeup date to play a COVID makeup game, why wouldn't that be allowed? If you can make that happen, you can make that happen, Gary, but I'm going to tell you right now, your officials pool is going to be very, very shallow this year. And that's the same reason, John Kozlowski, that I don't know that you're going to have JV officials on your contests. To be honest with you, in the Denver metro area, we are down 42% in officials. Colorado Springs is experiencing some of those. Let's see, what's the other one? Yes, Dominic, we will be sending out information on how to access Max Prep so that you are well aware of how to get into that. And then
Victor,
Ryan, one is,
if your coach did not receive that email, we have a post on CHSAA now with instructions of how they can sign up as well.
yes, Charles, I would recommend that you guys plan to maybe have your coaches help officiate your lower level games. Let's see. Jacob, if you guys are working toward in-school learning and you have a plan in place to get to in school at some point, I believe that you will be allowed to play, but I need you to send that question to me in an email so I can get a 100% accurate answer for you. But I do not anticipate that being a roadblock at this point. Bernie Pierce, depending upon how you want to handle some of these kinds of things, I will talk about the scheduling and when we get closer to that, because you will need to be sanitizing between games in your gymnasiums. That will be a requirement. Dave Hogan had the question, Ryan, are they ranking to 32?
Yep, I responded in chat, but we're likely going to have them rank 12, Dave. And the reason for that is we don't think it's realistic for coaches to rank 32 teams. Justin, how do you register? Yeah, there's a link. Someone, thanks, Jose, just responded right below. You can just email me information as well to just know that I'll take it from there. Thank you.
And Jason, you will have to sanitize between games, even if it's just teams and whatnot. Danielle, if you're going to use 2 games, you need to have that permission done and how it's going to be handled from your local health department. Guys, I'm going to hold off on answering some of these questions at this point because I'll get to some of those answers as we get further into this Zoom meeting. So this is what is happening. There will be 24 teams that qualify to 1A, 2A, and 3A, 32, 4A, and 5A. All classifications have had some regional qualifiers limited, and it's primarily due to the concerns that the CDPHE had on larger gatherings as we got to that point. There have been some questions about the qualifying from leagues. And I'm going to use the Colorado League, which has members in 3A and 4A, on how this will happen. The Colorado League will determine one league champion, and that champion will earn an automatic berth in the playoffs in that classification. So there won't be a 3A league champion in the Colorado League and a 4A league champion in the Colorado League, only one. All others will qualify through the RPI coaches poll, the CHSAA index. With that, please note, that once the playoff brackets have been announced and a team is quarantined, their opponent will receive a bye and advance to the next round. This also applies for semifinals and finals. For example, if a semifinalist or a finalist has to forfeit one of those games, they will not be made up. A champion will be crowned even if it comes via a forfeit. We are going to uphold the calendar dates as they have been approved by CDPHE. So you need to communicate this to your parents, coaches, school boards, and your communities. This will also be highlighted in our bulletin. On the official side of things, well, I'm going to step aside here and just talk about a couple of things in game, if I could, please. Please have hand sanitizer on each bench so when a player leaves the game, that player can sanitize his hands or her hands. Make plans to clean that basketball at halftime to maintain as much safety as possible when utilizing a ball that's going to be handled by a lot of people. Benches must practice social distancing. So I think you're going to need to take a look at planning for multiple rows. There will be room to go down to the end of the bench in some gyms to the end of the court, but at the same time, you may want to plan for multiple rows. Essential game personnel includes players, coaches, athletic trainers, scorekeepers, clock operator, and announcers. They all must be masked. They must be checked in appropriate through the CHSAA protocols. Any person responsible for the operation of the event is considered essential personnel. Officials need to be checked in as you would do any other game personnel under the CHSAA check-in protocols, and that means putting them on a tracking sheet as well. In advance of the contest, and this is really important this year, notify the officials of the game time, the check-in time, locker room availability, entry door, anything that is specific to your school that will help get them in the building safely, quickly, and with a minimum of work for you and for them. The officials are going to more than likely will come dressed for the contest. That's one of the things that they as an organization have been planning for. They will also bring their own water bottles. But anything that you can do to help make the entry and the exiting easier will expedite the way these games are played. I'm going to stop here for a second and let's see what kind of questions we have. Whoops, sorry guys, I'm getting way ahead of myself. John, locker rooms are going to be based on your local situation, and that's for anybody. We'll talk about that in the ventilation piece. Cameron, you have that correct. There's only one league champion. Anybody else, regardless of classification, would qualify through the RPI. Jose, you do not have to give the officials locker rooms, only if they are available. And I need to, I want to back up if I could, please. Here we go. this is the topic that has raised the most questions. And again, I have to remind you that we are operating under the allowed variances from CDPHE. Masks are mandatory for basketball players throughout the games per CDPHE. All non-athletes involved with Season B sports, including coaches, trainers, officials, event staff, and volunteers, are required to wear masks at all times in these settings. There is always going to be pushback on everything related to masks, but participation in the sport is a privilege and not a right. And we need to protect the opportunities for all students in all programs with the many uncertainties. So a failure to uphold the safety requirements for the season may result in the removal of an individual or a team from season participation. During a rest time or timeouts, if an athlete needs to lower or remove their mask, they are encouraged to leave the competitive arena and get away from everybody else in order to do that. There will be no mask timeouts. We thought we had come up with a good plan for that, but that was not an acceptable plan under this, so there will be no mask timeouts. Should a team show up to a game without masks, that team will forfeit that game, and the game will not be made up. Regardless of local health rules, the state health department has determined that masks must be worn for all indoor events. So the exception is, or the expectation is, that all schools comply.
Hey, Bert, just a quick question. Can you go over again what the essential personnel is at a game?
Sure. Essential game personnel includes players, coaches, athletic trainers, scorekeepers, clock operator, announcers, and any other person who is required to be there to ensure that the event is conducted appropriately.
Are net gaiters considered an adequate mask according to CDPHE?
I have not heard that they are not.
What about cheerleaders at games on the baseline?
Now that Jen will be discussing in her Zoom for Spirit tomorrow, and she will cover all of that, but they will be required.
And Bert, can you just reiterate the mask mandate, whose decision that was?
CDPHE. Any more?
I think we're caught up.
You got the, did you have some on YouTube as well?
We have quite a few on YouTube, if you want me to hop into those.
Well, we can try.
Okay. Let's see here. Nice thing is, thank you, coaches online. Answering each other's questions is helpful. What about managers and students who film or broadcast for parents on social media? Will they be allowed?
Those would be considered essential personnel as long as they follow the appropriate procedures.
Are they able to set up their benches like, let me just read it verbatim. This may be upcoming, but are we able to have our staff on benches with players behind NCAA style?
If you need to set up your benches that way in order to social distance your team, I think that's appropriate.
Okay, we have a few more questions on Zoom now.
Okay.
No medical waivers for masks, is that correct?
We are not considering any per the CDPHE mandate at this point. If you have specific questions about that, you need to contact me individually.
At this point, is there even a 1% chance that masks will not be required for players?
I can't answer that question. If I had to take a long-term guess, I would tell you no.
What about band? Can they have the band in the gym?
Band would be considered under capacity limits. So if you are able to have fans in there, you would have to count the band as part of that.
Sarah, can you clarify your question? I'm not sure what you're asking about student athletes, please. Sarah Crawford.
Okay, can I talk?
Yeah.
Okay, so my question is, can we have student managers that sit on the bench and help with water and towels?
If you're going to consider them essential personnel, I can't tell you no.
Okay.
Bert, did CDPHE say why they allow college basketball players to not wear masks while playing?
This is a question that comes to me about 30 times a day from parents. And I can just simply respond to you. College basketball players are tested virtually every day, sometimes twice a day. And they still have games postponed because of COVID. But they are doing things in a little different manner. They are testing every player, every person involved in the contest, anywhere from 3 times a week to 14 times a week.
Do their players, coaches, and essential workers count towards capacity numbers?
That would be a local decision on that particular piece.
Will students be required to have a regular COVID test?
Not under our requirements.
Dora, we are recording this. It'll be available on our YouTube page. What about spectators, Bert? And also, second question on locker room use for athletes.
Capacity limits are going to be determined locally, not by the state. So you're going to have a conversation with your local or your county health jurisdiction to determine what they are going to allow or if they're going to allow people in the gyms. And how they are going to do that. My guess is if you're going to allow them, they may be requiring you to track everybody.
Does a school's county have to be in level yellow in order to play a contest?
The variances that we have received are statewide and are related to CHSAA events only. So your teams can play under those variances.
Are they still using 3 referees?
In most cases, they are. And they will probably ask you to double up games so that they can assign 3 officials for 2 games. But in between those games, you still need to sanitize your facility.
What is the return to play protocol for a positive COVID case? Negative.
That is determined locally by your local county jurisdiction. Some are requiring 10 days quarantine, some are requiring 14.
Mike Regan, can you clarify your question, please? Question from Josh, can they be more strict than the county?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Can their guidelines be more strict than the county guidelines?
Absolutely.
Are plastic face shields acceptable masks?
I will have to get back to you on that. My take is no. You still need the mask underneath.
Let's see here. What about tryouts? How should they handle tryouts?
Okay, I just got a quick text from Bethany, and face shields are not allowed, or are not considered are not considered masks. Ryan, repeat that last question. I'm sorry.
How should they handle tryouts?
Tryouts can be handled any way that you normally would do that. I would suggest that you look at them in pods of 5 to 7 as you are trying them out that first week, 18th through the week starting on the 18th, in order to limit the possibility of exposure there. But you are limited by the number of players that you can have in the gym at any one time during a practice to 25 and 3 coaches.
Who's in charge of enforcing the player mask mandate once the game begins?
That is on the school administrator. That is on the coach. And the officials should not have to get involved in it. But if the officials have to get involved in it, they may handle it in the exact same way that they handle a concussion situation and simply remove the kid from the game.
Can you please clarify the use of water and mask breaks during a timeout?
There are no mask breaks, period. Okay. So water, they need to be away from anybody if they're drinking water. It's going to be difficult, guys. You're going to have to come up with different ways to make this work.
Will you send them specific variances from the state health and COVID response team for them to share with their district offices?
Rhonda is going to have a Zoom on Thursday where she will be going through a lot of the information that she has shared with and received that is going to all of the local jurisdictions through CDPHE. But yes, we will be providing you with a lot of information in the coming days that will help you communicate with the people you need to communicate with.
So making sure, does the variance we secure, does that supersede county health?
This is the state health department that has given us the variances so that all of our schools can play.
This one's a tricky one. Bert, if an opponent is applying for CHSAA membership, but isn't a CHSAA member yet, does the variance allow them to be scheduled for games? Might be one we have to get back to them on.
Yeah, that's one that I will have to get back to you on because I think that's an interesting question.
Is there a standard wait time in between games after you've sanitized?
There typically is not. You just have to be sure that you have everything done in the appropriate manner to get things sanitized and then let the teams on the floor for their warm up and then go into the game. We are suggesting anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes between game times to get that done. If you can do it faster, great. You guys know what you're doing. You may have more people involved in the cleaning and the sanitizing than simply 1 or 2 or 3 people. So that's entirely up to you, but you do need to sanitize the facility between games.
Mike, if you want to just go ahead and unmute and ask your question, I think you'd do a better job at explaining it than I would.
Who is it?
It's Mike Regan.
Oh, I can't hear him.
Yeah, he's unmuted. Now he's muted again. Let's see here. Does this mean we can have 25 players in a gym with 3 coaches and not cohorts of 12? And I think that's back to your tryout explanation.
Yeah, that's on the tryout. It does, Mike, but if you look at our recommendation is to keep those split into cohorts of 5 to 7 whenever possible.
Follow up on the water. Does that mean the player has to leave the bench area to take a drink?
if that's what it requires, if it requires lowering a mask or anything along that line, they have to be away from everybody else so that they can maintain the social distancing that is required.
The meeting you talked about that Rhonda's holding, is that January 7th or the January 14th?
That one I thought was this Thursday, but Ryan, I don't know. You're the one that schedules our meetings. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll have to double check with her. Well, Dave, she'll send an email out with login information for that. So we'll get that to you guys. Is there a specific number of coaches allowed in the gym per team for contests?
3.
Huddles for timeouts. I'm guessing, are those allowed?
Not in the typical fashion that you think of a huddle. You're going to need to work your way through how you're going to handle that by keeping kids as spaced apart as much as possible in your team huddles. They will need to keep their face masks on in the huddle.
The between game sanitation, is that just if you have multiple teams, or are we talking between junior varsity and varsity as well?
Between any 2 games, whether they're varsity or junior varsity, any 2 games, they need to be sanitizing and cleaning in between those games.
Playing out-of-state teams, is that a district decision?
That is a district decision.
Can coaches?
And you will be playing by Colorado protocols when those teams that come in from out of state must follow our protocols, not their state protocols.
Can coaches coach at multiple levels? Can a varsity coach go to JV games and be on the bench and vice versa?
Yes, but I will tell you that in softball, that created a problem for 3 or 4 teams where there was some exposure, and those coaches ultimately ended up having to quarantine for 14 days and miss the state tournament.
Is there a standard?
So all I'm telling you is be careful how you handle that.
Let's see here. Is there a standard means of disinfecting and sanitizing that CDPHE requires so that all the schools are doing the same thing?
There is not, to my knowledge, but our Sports Medicine Advisory Committee has recommendations on how to appropriately sanitize facilities, and all of that information is on CHSAA now under SMAC.
Are bus drivers considered essential personnel?
They would be on, particularly for long trips.
Let's see here. Are teams that play in the next game allowed to be in the gym for the previous game so they can shoot at halftime?
They are not.
Let's see here. Water will be difficult because it falls down onto our county guidelines. Lots of single-use 8-ounce water bottles and away from everyone is how we are planning on doing everything. That's a suggestion from the trainer at Riverdale Ridge. From Joe Garmont, are we having a rest timeout at the first whistle after the 4-minute mark of each quarter?
There are no mask timeouts or rest timeouts. So all of that conversation that we had prior to the holiday break no longer exists where it comes from mask timeouts or any other additional timeouts in a game.
Thinking that our timeouts will have to be socially distanced, can we use computers and headsets to communicate with our players during timeouts?
You can under the rules anyway.
Lawrence, this is being recorded, so you can go back and watch it. It's on our YouTube page. Are locker rooms allowed to be used for halftime, or are the teams required to stay in the gym?
Depends on if your local health department is going to allow you to use your locker rooms.
In small schools, are they allowed to swing JV players to varsity?
They are. That was why we have adjusted the quarter limits to try and help you salvage 2 or 3 levels of teams.
Okay. During timeouts, Bert, maybe if you just want to go over again timeouts and water, there's lots of questions regarding the use, how they can drink water if masks are required. If you just want to quickly touch on that again.
CDPHE is requiring masks. Okay, so you've got to figure out how you can keep your kids hydrated appropriately with masks and drinking water. They cannot take their masks off in the presence of anybody else that's closer than 6 feet in order to drink because of the social distancing concerns that the virus brings to us. So there are a number of water bottles that have spouts. There are a number of water bottles that each individual player should be responsible for their own water anyway, and their own water bottles anyway. The trainer from Riverdale Ridge, is that where it was?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Is absolutely correct. If you're using individual bottles of water, individualized things, you can do some of that and still stay within the and keep everybody safe, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Nick, if you want to go ahead and unmute, he's going to ask Mike's question. Nick,
yeah.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So what Mike was trying to ask is, being that he's up at Middle Park, if local county restrictions allow for spectators, can sub-varsity or the girls team sit in the gym during the boys game due to the fact that he may not have places to put teams, and use that as his count instead of spectators? And then also, if they are carpooling, are the parents that are carpooling going to be considered essential personnel, much like a bus driver?
A school employee would be considered essential personnel. I do not consider parents essential personnel at this point. But the capacity limits, if they chose to use their capacity limits by using their with their team, then that could work for the situation that you have described.
Let's see here. Okay, Dave Hogan, where on the SMAC page are the facility cleaning requirements?
I thought that there was some, and if I'm wrong, Dave, we'll make sure we get those up there. But if we're looking for standard processes, I believe that there are some that are out there. I may have misspoke, and I apologize if I did. I'll have to check with Jen on that.
It may have missed this, but am I correct in assuming there will be no halftime warm-ups for teams scheduled for the following game?
Let me get back to you on that.
Okay, looks like we're caught up on Zoom. I'm going to quickly try to catch up on YouTube. In the meantime, will you quickly describe what a huddle looks like while I try to figure out YouTube?
They need to be masked. The teams all need to be masked in the team huddle. They need to be somewhat spread out in order to make sure that there is some social distancing with that. If that means you got to take your team huddle to the end of the floor, take your team huddle to the end of the floor.
Okay, can you please help coaches understand the justification for wearing masks on the court when wrestling does not have to wear masks?
This was a mandate from CDPHE because of the constant contact between a number of players, not just two wrestlers. And in those conversations, CDHP would not move off of that because the interaction between 10 players provides a lot more opportunity for the spreading of the disease than contact between two players.
CDPHE allows for 3 feet of spacing for students in the classroom, so I assume a huddle could allow for students to be within 3 feet.
Correct.
Why can we not just test once per week?
Because CDHP has approved a variance that says you have to have masks on. At this point, testing was not a part of that.
At small schools, we sometimes play 4 levels in one evening. JV boys, JV girls, girls varsity, boys varsity. Can I keep the girls teams together and play back to back without having to clear the gym, sanitize, then bring the 2 boys teams back in?
You're still going to have to sanitize between the games, particularly the bench areas. How you handle the capacity people and those kinds of things, that's going to be a decision that you have to make.
Can JV watch varsity games after they play?
Only if your capacity limits at the local level allow for fans to be in attendance.
And Bert, can you just reiterate that we did in fact ask CDPHE to play without masks and they required?
Yes, we did. The request went in that anytime you were on the floor as a participant, that you did not have to wear the mask. And that was not approved. The next piece was then, could we have mask breaks where we social distance, the players on the floor social distance. And that also was not acceptable. And so we are left with, if you want to play, we're playing with masks.
What is the
Don't
suggestion?
know how many other ways I can tell you that.
Thank you. I think some people are just having a hard time hearing that. What is the suggestion to do with JV players, especially if they're traveling?
I think it's incumbent of the home team to try and find a place where those teams, if it does not fit within the capacity limits of the home team, to find a classroom or someplace for them while they wait for their game to start.
Are timeouts the same amount of time as usual?
They are. No adjustments.
Okay. If you want to move forward with your presentation, I'll keep it
Yeah,
on.
we'll give it a shot. We are, some of the things that are coming up are also things that are critical for you as athletic directors and administrators to know. And that is avoid poorly ventilated areas. Improving ventilation is a key safety factor. So work with your building engineer to promote airflow throughout your gyms and high traffic areas. And I'm guessing that this will be this is just me thinking ahead to when you're talking about capacity limits and things like that. They may ask you, what are you doing to improve ventilation in your gym for your fans, for your players, to keep to keep the airflow going. So the capacity limits are going to be considered for ventilation. They're determined by local or county health jurisdiction. The number of games played at a time is a local health department issue. So if you have 2 gyms and you're going to play 2 games at a time, you need to make sure that you have cleared that through your local health jurisdiction. And then the last one was schedule time between games to completely sanitize. Let's keep everybody safe. Let's get through our 7-week, 7.5, 8-week season.
Who's ready for some more questions? Let's see here. Are those requests to play without masks to the health department? Are we still making those requests?
Those conversations may still be going on, but my understanding is that there is not going to be any movement on that.
Can their number in the gym exceed the capacity limit of 10 in red or 25 in orange if they are essential personnel and players with the CHSAA variants?
Yes.
Yeah, Mike, we are going to send out a copy of the state variants. Is that correct, Bert? That's what you said earlier?
Yeah, and I mean, I've sent them out earlier as well.
What all needs to be sanitized, and are there specific guidelines?
I'm sorry, say that one again, Ryan.
What all needs to be sanitized, and are there specific guidelines?
We will get those guidelines because I know that they do exist, and we will get them to schools here very shortly.
Is there ever going to be a point where not having a mask in a proper position, or even just having one, will become a bench warning and or a technical?
It could happen, but I do not anticipate it happening because I have a great deal of trust in administrators, coaches, to ensure that their kids are doing what they have to do to make this work.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All righty. Game roster limits. They're 12 per team, per level. 12 players, 3 coaches, 1 athletic trainer per team, and essential personnel only. Again, capacity is determined by your local health jurisdiction. Practice limits are 25 athletes, 3 coaches, and 1 athletic trainer. And it is strongly suggested, strongly encouraged to develop pods for practice to limit exposure. Do we have some more questions, or should I go on to?
I think keep going.
Okay. Our scheduling suggestions. Build your schedules that limit travel and overnight stays if you can. There are parts of the state that cannot do that. But if you can, limit travel and overnight stays. If you're adding games, you don't necessarily have to blow up your schedule that you already had simply because we now have an additional week. You can add them into the week either at the end or at the beginning of the season if that's the direction you choose to go. And the officials assigners have indicated that sometimes if you are going to have multiple games, then they are going to assign a crew to work multiple games so that we have enough officials to cover all of the games. I encourage each of you to spend some time with your assigner and what their needs are. And always schedule your league games first and then your non-league. Because your league is going to be your first step to playoff qualification. We're getting close to the end here, so I'm just going to kind of spin through these. You've seen these many, many times before. Open gyms need permission from your district and health officials to hold those. Participation in open gyms cannot be a requirement to making a team. No games or contact with any other schools is allowed prior to January 25th. During season B, no scrimmages or foundation games. We are going to develop a CHSAA game exchange. So if you have a game that is canceled by COVID, there may be someone else who had a game canceled by COVID that you can look at on our website, and maybe you can find a game in replacement of the one that was canceled. Weather cancellations, it will not be able to be rescheduled, but you and your assigner need to work through those issues. And with that, I think I have just a couple of other things.
We have questions as well, Bert.
Yeah, no, I think we're going to go to the questions.
Okay.
The only thing I would ask is that schools that have decided they're not going to play basketball this winter or during this season, to please notify us at your earliest convenience so that we can make those notations as we get the bulletin ready to go out this week. Let's go.
Are there contingency plans that can be shared if restrictions increase statewide?
We're going to try and stay true to our calendar. Our variances have been given to us, so we anticipate that we will be able to play our games.
Do we have an avenue?
And short of a complete shutdown, I don't see that not being able to happen. Now, we may not be able to have anybody in the stands, but we will have two teams, officials and coaches.
Do you have a way for schools to find who's still missing games? For example, other sports have created spreadsheets or databases of people missing games.
That is what the game exchange will be.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there going to be a pregame meeting with officials, captains with officials, shaking hands after games?
Post-game congratulatory things should probably only be fist bumps or elbow bumps or those types of things as you go through the line. Limit the contact as much as possible. There will be a pregame meeting with officials, but they will ask you to remain socially distanced.
Are junior high programs allowed the same variances, or is this just for high school?
We have only requested for CHSAA member schools.
The revised regain eligibility date for season B is February 1st. With the revised season B, will this stay on February 1st, or did it move back to the original date of January 25th?
It has remained on February 1st. Okay, so I see. Let me go back to the game exchange. The game exchange right now is only for games that are canceled during the season. If you're still looking for games, go to our games wanted piece. Ryan, can you tell them how to get onto that?
Yeah, and actually, what I would say, Bert, is we can create almost an identical spreadsheet to what.
And that's what I was hoping you would say.
What football use? We'll just create something identical to that, that everyone can hop on and find games in their area.
Okay.
Many varsity teams utilize 3 coaches. Most JV teams only have 1. If JV and varsity practice together, is there any way to allow for 4 coaches rather than 3?
We have only been given a variance for 3.
Do you have the location of a rules meeting for coaches? where they can
Okay.
find it?
The rules meetings for coaches were videotaped over the summer for basketball, can be found on the Colorado High School Coaches Association website. That's www.colohsca.org, and then search for the sport that you need your coaches to listen to it. They've all been videotaped, and those will suffice, and they have a way to help you track that.
And Bernie asked a question about team schedules. Bernie, we still need those schedules in Max Preps.
Absolutely.
So we don't have a way to upload those for you.
Yeah, Dora, it is www.colohsca.org.
Would there be a situation, Bert, where a game would stop in the event a mask comes down?
Depends on the situation. But you need to work with your players to keep those masks up.
Are stat takers considered essential personnel or not?
Scorekeepers are, stat people are not.
I assume, are they having each coach check in their own team before they arrive?
Yeah, I think that will, that is what most, that is what we have done in most of our others, is that the coaches has handled that check-in prior to arrival, and then they can hand that tracking sheet to the appropriate person on site.
If a school,
I don't think you want to change that process.
If a school decides not to play this season, can their players go to a nearby school and play without transfer rules applying? Do they move as a school without a program?
They would fall under state law if your school does not offer a program. And the items that go there will be handled by the receiving school.
How do coaches satisfy the coach official mandatory meeting for playing at high school big teams?
That is through the Colorado High School Coaches Association website.
Richard Judd asked if the PowerPoint will be made available.
I can certainly make it available. Anybody that wants it, I can email it to them. If you want me to email it to the membership, I can do that.
Can you reiterate the dates of the first rounds of the playoffs, first 3 rounds?
Yes,
and also,
I can.
Brandon, those dates, oh no, sorry, we only have the start of the postseason. I take it back.
The state bracket dates are March 9th, 11th, 13th, 16th. 9, 11, 13, 16.
Will girls and boys be on the same night for the playoffs?
Yes. For this year only.
The question regarding the situation where play might stop was specifically an accidental situation where a mask comes off. Would an official stop play?
Then that is going to be something that the official is going to have to deal with as it happens and have to make a judgment call on that. And the officials are not our mask police. Okay, that's the coach, that's the AD. But if it becomes a problem, then the official can remove that player from the game.
Good thought here for water during timeouts. Would a water bottle with a straw under the mask without removing it solve the issue about drinks at timeouts?
I believe so. I believe that's the way I would go.
What is the rationale that 1A through 3A only qualify 24, but 4A and 5A qualify 32.
4A and 5A are cutting their playoffs by 16 teams each. 2A is cutting its playoffs by eight teams, and 3A is dropping its to by 8 games as well. So we knew we had to shorten the playoff season for all. And we tried to keep as many as we could in there. The people that continue to ask about this number are missing the point in my mind that we picked up 2 games that benefit all the schools that play basketball.
Okay, I'm just trying to sort through stuff real quick. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
For COVID rescheduling, do we go from the list to athletic director, or we go through Ryan and Bert to align the games? I would think that they schedule the schools first. Our list is only going to be to show you what's available.
Correct.
But make sure that that gets updated on Max Preps.
Absolutely.
Can all classifications have swing players?
Yes.
Okay. Does playing boys and girls on the same night during the playoffs cause a possible official shortage?
No, because we don't have as many teams in the playoffs as we would have ordinarily playing that night.
If you're a 1A playoff team and play in a 2A league, how will your seeding be affected?
If you win your league outright as the 1A school in a 2A league, then you are the league champion and you will have an automatic berth in the playoffs. Otherwise, you will qualify through the CHSAA selection index.
If they play out of state, and I'm assuming they mean in that state, are they good to follow that state's guidelines? For example, if Utah does not require masks.
I honestly don't know the answer to that one right now. But I would be very careful about playing in a state that has had a number of postponements already.
Okay, I think we're caught up.
All righty, y'all. And I just want to reiterate that when we talk about the masks that must be worn, they must be worn in the manner that covers their nose and their mouth.
When was the bulletin going to be available, Bert?
It will be available later this week. You will get an email as to when they are posted.
Okay. I think that's it.
I appreciate it, guys. All of you very much.